"You're so pathetic now," my wife sneered, and those four words detonated in our marble-appointed master bedroom like a precision-guided missile. Not because they were completely unexpected. I'd been watching our marriage disintegrate for months through a series of subtle dismissals and calculated cruelties I'd been too trusting to properly investigate, but because she delivered them with such casual contempt while adjusting her diamond earrings in our walk-in closet. Preparing for another foundation planning session that I now suspected had nothing to do with charity work and everything to do with the systematic destruction of our 15-year marriage by a woman who'd grown bored with the man whose investment banking success had provided her with the Greenwich lifestyle she used as a stage for her carefully orchestrated social climbing. I was beginning to understand. Her affair with someone who apparently found her more exciting than the predictable husband who'd built everything she now took for granted while dismissing him as pathetic. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My name is David Sterling, I'm 44 years old, and I'm a senior partner at Sterling and Associates Investment Banking, a boutique firm in Manhattan that specializes in mergers and acquisitions for mid-market companies. The kind of business that had provided my wife Olivia and me with a luxurious lifestyle in our colonial estate overlooking Long Island Sound, complete with the infinity pool, the wine cellar, and the kind of financial freedom that lets you write five-figure checks to charity galas without checking your portfolio performance first. But apparently none of that success was enough to keep my wife from viewing me as an embarrassing obstacle to the sophisticated image she'd been cultivating through her role as executive director of the Fairfield Hope Foundation, where her organizational brilliance and social connections had transformed a small local charity into one of Connecticut's most prestigious philanthropic organizations that attracted celebrities, politicians, and the kind of wealthy donors who could make or break reputations with a single conversation at the right cocktail party. Olivia, 41, had evolved from the ambitious marketing director I'd married into something far more calculating and socially strategic. Brilliant at orchestrating events that appeared in town and country, and commanded six-figure sponsorships from corporations eager to associate with her carefully curated brand of accessible elegance. Ambitious in ways I'd initially admired, but had gradually begun to recognize as ruthless social positioning that treated our marriage as just another asset to be leveraged for maximum advantage in her quest to become the most influential woman in Fairfield County's charitable elite. And for 15 years, I'd believed we were partners in building not just wealth, but genuine impact through the foundation work that had become her consuming passion. Never imagining that my role in her calculations had diminished from beloved husband to convenient funding source to, apparently, pathetic embarrassment who no longer fit the image she was projecting to the social circles that had become more important to her than the man who'd made her ascension possible through unwavering financial support and professional connections. Our life had what I thought was an unshakable foundation built on shared values and mutual respect. Morning coffee together on our stone patio before our 16-year-old daughter Emma woke up. Family dinners at least 3 nights a week despite our demanding schedules. Weekend adventures sailing Long Island Sound or attending gallery openings in Manhattan. Annual trips to Europe, where we'd rediscover each other away from the pressures of my deals and her fundraising campaigns. And a social circle of successful couples who'd known us since our early 30s. Back when we were still building our respective careers and dreaming about the kind of influence we'd eventually wield through strategic philanthropy and community leadership that would leave a lasting legacy for Emma and the causes we cared about most deeply. I trusted Olivia completely, the kind of bone-deep trust that comes from watching someone navigate Connecticut's competitive social landscape with apparent integrity, from seeing how she treated our daughter, our friends, the staff at foundation events, and I'd never had reason to question that trust until subtle changes started creeping in like hairline cracks in a foundation. So gradual I almost didn't notice them until they accumulated into a pattern that made my stomach tighten with unspoken dread every time she returned from another late-night strategy meeting or weekend donor cultivation retreat that seemed to energize her in ways that our family time no longer could. Her enthusiasm for foundation work growing in direct proportion to her apparent boredom with the predictable routines of our marriage that had once provided stability, but now seemed to represent everything she was trying to escape. The first sign was her sudden obsession with personal branding, hiring an expensive image consultant who helped her develop a more polished public persona, buying designer clothes that went far beyond her usual professional wardrobe, spending thousands on beauty treatments and media training that she claimed were necessary for representing the foundation at high-profile events, always with explanations that sounded reasonable but felt rehearsed. like she'd practiced them during her drive home from whatever meeting had actually occupied her time, while I ate dinner alone with Emma. Trying to explain why Mommy was always working late for such important causes that required her personal attention in ways that apparently couldn't be delegated or scheduled during normal business hours. Then came the phone behavior changes. The device that used to sit casually on kitchen counters suddenly became something she guarded like classified information, carrying it everywhere, taking it to the bathroom, keeping it face down during family dinners, the soft buzz of notifications making her glance at the screen with an expression I'd never seen before. Something between anticipation and guilt that made me realize I was watching my wife become a stranger, while she claimed to be building something meaningful through her foundation work that was apparently requiring increasing amounts of personal sacrifice and emotional investment that left little energy for the husband and daughter who'd supported her ambitions from the beginning. The name Andrew started appearing in her foundation stories around this time, always in professional contexts. Andrew Blake, the new philanthropic advisor who'd helped major foundations across the country develop innovative fundraising strategies. Andrew had connections with celebrity donors who could transform the foundation's profile. Andrew suggested this exclusive retreat where board members could develop deeper relationships with potential major contributors, and I filed his name away as just another consultant until I realized how often she mentioned him. How her voice carried a different energy when she talked about their collaborations. A breathless excitement and admiration that reminded me of how she used to talk about me during our early dating years, when everything felt electric and full of possibility. Before I'd apparently become nothing more than the reliable financial foundation that enabled her to pursue whatever excitement she was finding with Andrew and his supposedly transformative approach to philanthropic leadership. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March when Olivia returned from another donor strategy session with Andrew. Glowing with what she claimed was excitement about breakthrough fundraising concepts they developed during their intensive planning retreat, but looking unmistakably like a woman who'd spent the evening being thoroughly satisfied by someone who definitely wasn't her husband. And when I asked about the specific strategies they discussed, there was a pause just long enough to make me notice before she launched into a detailed description of innovative giving models and donor engagement techniques that sounded more like she was reciting from a brochure than describing actual conversations. Her eyes bright with memories of experiences she'd never share with the man who'd funded her foundation work from the beginning. That night, as we lay in our bed with the new silk nightgown she'd bought, but claimed was just for feeling confident during important meetings, she delivered her devastating assessment of our relationship with the casual cruelty of someone who'd been comparing me to another man for months. David, I've been thinking about what I need to feel fulfilled and excited about life, and I have to be honest, you're so pathetic now, so predictable and boring. So focused on your deals and your routines, instead of understanding that I'm building something transformative with the foundation. Something that requires passion and vision, and the kind of dynamic partnership you're apparently incapable of providing, because you've gotten comfortable and complacent in ways that make me feel trapped rather than inspired. The words hung in the air like poison, and as I looked at my wife of 15 years, I realized that the trusting, generous husband who'd supported every foundation initiative and social ambition was dying. Slowly being replaced by someone harder, more calculating. Someone who understood that if Olivia wanted to use our joint resources to fund her affair with her philanthropic advisor, while systematically destroying my self-worth through psychological manipulation disguised as honest communication, I'd need to become far more strategic than generous, far more methodical than trusting, and as I lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathing beside me while she probably fantasized about Andrew and their next strategic planning session, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to use my expertise in due diligence and financial investigation to uncover exactly what kind of philanthropic work my wife had been conducting with Andrew during those late-night strategy sessions. And when I gathered irrefutable evidence of her systematic betrayal, the woman who thought I was pathetic would discover that the predictable husband she'd underestimated was about to orchestrate the most devastating revelation of her entire life. Starting with her own charity gala, where 400 of Connecticut's most influential philanthropists would witness the complete destruction of her carefully constructed image as a devoted wife and visionary foundation leader. The opportunity to uncover Olivia's systematic betrayal came the following Thursday morning, when she rushed out for what she claimed was an emergency donor strategy session with Andrew. Leaving behind her MacBook Pro open on our shared home office desk, the screen still glowing with an email thread that would destroy every lie she'd told me over the past 8 months. And as I stood there staring at the device that contained the digital fingerprints of her deception, I realized this was the moment of truth I'd been both dreading and desperately needing. The chance to either restore my faith in our marriage or confirm the devastating suspicions that had been eating away at my sanity since her cruel declaration that I was pathetic compared to whatever excitement she was finding through her foundation work with Andrew Blake. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. As a senior partner in investment banking with over 20 years of experience in corporate due diligence and fraud detection, I developed an instinct for financial discrepancies that had helped me uncover millions in hidden liabilities during merger negotiations. And those same analytical skills were now screaming at me to investigate the laptop sitting innocently on our mahogany desk, its password protection disabled in the comfortable assumption that her reliable, trusting husband would never violate her privacy or question the expensive lifestyle she'd been funding with our joint accounts, while claiming to build Connecticut's most innovative charitable organization through networking events and donor cultivation activities that I now suspected were elaborate cover stories for the most expensive betrayal of our 15-year marriage. I approached the device with the methodical precision I used for complex financial audits, my hands steady despite the sick feeling in my stomach, and what I found stopped me cold. An email thread labeled Post-Gala Strategy where Andrew had written, "Last night was beyond words. I'm still thinking about that suite at the Carlisle and the way you said my name when you finally let go," followed by Olivia's reply timestamped at 2:11 a.m. "You make me feel alive in a way David never has. With you I'm not just some banker's wife. I'm who I'm supposed to be. He'll write the checks, but you and I are the real partners now." Her words hitting me like a financial instrument being marked to zero as I realized that my name in that sentence represented nothing more than a funding source for their affair. I forced my hands steady and did what I do best. I documented everything, taking screenshots of every damaging message before opening her cloud drive folder structure, where I found a hidden folder labeled A+O Private that contained photos of them together at hotel bars and dimly lit restaurants. Travel confirmations for weekend retreats that matched precisely with times Olivia claimed to be at foundation conferences, reservations at the Carlisle, the Plaza, and a vineyard in Napa that had never appeared on any Fairfield Hope itinerary. Each piece of evidence building an undeniable case of systematic deception, funded entirely with money I'd earned through 2 decades of building Sterling and Associates into one of Manhattan's most respected investment banking firms. Within hours, I had contacted Amanda Norris, a private investigator I'd used twice for vetting CEOs in contentious mergers, and when I explained the situation, she didn't ask stupid questions, just said, "Cheating spouse case, I need proof that would survive SEC-level scrutiny, which means we do this my way with surveillance, digital forensics, and timestamps. You keep your cool and act normal because if you confront her now you'll lose everything. So are you ready to treat this like a deal instead of a marriage?" Followed by my immediate call to Matthew Lane, our firm's outside family law counsel, who walked me through asset protection strategies that would prevent Olivia from accessing or claiming any portion of my business or investment portfolios, while preserving my ability to support Emma during what was about to become the most expensive legal battle of my life. Over the next 10 days, Amanda's updates came in clipped factual texts that felt more like client memos than voyeuristic gossip. 3:14, 8:12 p.m. Olivia and Andrew seen entering the plaza, separate entrances, same elevator, same floor, accompanied by timestamped photos of Olivia in the navy dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, now hanging off her shoulder as she laughed up at Andrew, followed by images of them at intimate corner tables and later leaving through service corridors, disheveled but smiling like teenagers who thought they'd gotten away with something. While her digital forensics specialist pulled metadata from Olivia's cloud backups, revealing repeated nighttime logins from hotel IP addresses and videos labeled Gala Pitch Rehearsal, that were actually soft-voiced love notes to Andrew about how he understood her mind and body better than anyone ever had, including one 27-second clip of Olivia in a partially unzipped dress with Andrew's hand on her thigh whispering, "At the gala, when you're in the front row and I'm on stage, you'll know I'm really speaking to you." As I watched that clip once, I didn't need to see it twice. I realized that the Fairfield Hope Gala wasn't just Olivia's professional triumph, it was her temple the night she'd spent a year orchestrating and destroying her there. In that room, in front of that audience of 400 Connecticut philanthropists, would shatter the image she cared about more than our marriage, our family, or me. So I called the AV company that handled the gala every year, introducing myself not as Olivia's husband but as David Sterling, co-sponsor through Sterling and Associates, requesting to add a short video before Olivia's keynote about truth and transparency in philanthropy. And when money talks and platinum sponsors talk even louder, they agreed without hesitation to accommodate my ready-to-play USB file. Meanwhile, Matthew tweaked the legal framework with divorce papers drafted and ready to be served the morning after the gala, temporary orders prepared in case Olivia tried to retaliate, and a PR consultant on standby in case the story leaked into the financial press. And when he warned me during our final pre-gala meeting that this would be a kill shot with no coming back. Not just for the marriage, but for her entire social world, I stared at the stack of printed exhibits on his desk. Olivia's words, Olivia's choices, Olivia's systematic betrayal, and replied, "She already killed the marriage. I'm just deciding where the funeral is held." At home, I played my part to perfection, praising her dress choice for the gala, complimenting her speech drafts, even suggesting a minor edit that made her line about unshakable trust more powerful, knowing exactly how ironic it would sound over what I was planning to show, while Emma noticed the tension but couldn't name it, asking one night, "Dad, are you and Mom okay?" "She's different and you're quieter," prompting me to look at my 16-year-old and lie for the last time on Olivia's behalf. "Things are changing, but I promise you this, I won't let anyone damage your future, not even by accident." In my office, I assembled the final video with banker's precision. A clean sequence starting with Olivia at past galas speaking about integrity, then the messages, the hotel booking confirmations, the surveillance photos, and finally that 27-second clip, muted but unmistakable, ending with Olivia's own words on screen. "He'll write the checks, but you and I are the real partners now," followed by a fade to black in the title card, "The Cost of Betrayal." And as I watched it once as a banker reviewing a presentation before a make-or-break pitch, I knew it was tight, irrefutable, and going to end her completely, so I encrypted it on a USB drive, placed it in a small velvet sponsor box, and locked it in my safe, knowing that in 10 days, the woman who'd called me pathetic would realize just how dangerous I could be when I stopped loving her, and started treating her like a hostile actor in a deal I refused to lose. The first strategic decision I made that night, sitting alone in my home office, while Olivia performed her nightly ritual of texting Andrew about their next romantic strategy session disguised as foundation planning, was that I wouldn't confront her emotionally, wouldn't demand explanations or ask the desperate questions that devastated husbands typically ask when they discover their wives have reduced them to nothing more than convenient funding sources for affairs with philanthropic advisors. Instead, if she wanted to turn our 15-year marriage into a calculated performance where I played the pathetic husband financing her betrayal, then I would treat this like the most complex hostile takeover of my career, implementing strategic countermeasures with the methodical precision that had made Sterling and Associates one of Manhattan's most feared investment banking firms, ensuring that when the truth finally emerged, it wouldn't be in a private moment she could manipulate or deny, but at her own charity gala where 400 of Connecticut's most influential philanthropists would witness her complete destruction, while I simultaneously executed legal and financial protocols that would leave her with nothing but the consequences of systematically betraying the man who'd built everything she was about to lose. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My investment banking background had taught me that emotional decisions create catastrophic deal failures, and I couldn't afford any weakness in what was about to become the most important strategic campaign of my life. So within 24 hours, I was coordinating with Matthew Lane on comprehensive asset protection strategies that would make it legally impossible for Olivia to claim any portion of Sterling and Associates or my investment portfolios. Presenting these changes to my partners as standard succession planning and tax optimization protocols they readily accepted without question, completely unaware that these were defensive measures against a predatory spouse who'd been systematically using our joint resources to fund her affair, while convincing me that I was supporting meaningful charitable work, rather than financing the systematic destruction of our marriage by a woman who'd turned adultery into a business plan disguised as philanthropic leadership. The asset protection implementation moved with military precision as Matthew's corporate attorneys restructured my business ownership through multi-class share structures and irrevocable trusts, while I quietly transferred Emma's college funds and our joint investment accounts into protected vehicles that would be immune from any settlement demands Olivia might make during divorce proceedings, simultaneously establishing a separate household operating account that would cover Emma's expenses and basic living costs, while cutting off Olivia's access to the credit cards and bank accounts she'd been using to fund romantic getaways with Andrew, ensuring that her next hotel reservation would be declined, and her next expensive dinner with her philanthropic advisor would require explanation she couldn't provide without admitting the affair that would soon become public knowledge in the most devastating way imaginable. Amanda Norris provided the final surveillance report 3 days before the gala, a comprehensive dossier that read like a corporate intelligence briefing documenting over $67,000 in joint account expenditures for hotel suites, romantic dinners, weekend trips, and expensive gifts for Andrew, all categorized as foundation expenses, while the audio evidence captured Olivia stating, "David is so oblivious. He just keeps signing checks and thinking I'm working late for charity. It's pathetic, really. He's so focused on his deals he can't see what's right in front of him. But after the gala, when I'm established as Connecticut's premier philanthropic leader, Andrew and I can make our move, and he'll have no choice but to give me what I deserve." Her voice carrying the casual cruelty of someone who'd convinced herself that her boring husband was too predictable to ever discover that his wife was systematically stealing from him, while planning his financial destruction with breathtaking arrogance and calculated contempt. The psychological preparation required treating this like any other high-stakes deal where emotions could cause catastrophic errors, so I spent hours in my office reviewing the presentation sequence, timing each segment for maximum impact, knowing that 400 people would be watching when Olivia's carefully constructed world collapsed in real time. While Emma's perceptive observations during dinner conversations made it clear that my 16-year-old daughter had already sensed something was fundamentally wrong with her mother's behavior. Asking pointed questions about why mom was always working late and why she seemed different lately, prompting me to sit her down 2 days before the gala and explain with careful honesty that her mother and I were getting divorced because of choices that had broken the trust in our marriage. Watching Emma nod with mature understanding as she said, "I knew something was wrong, Dad, and I've heard her on the phone late at night talking to Andrew in ways that didn't sound like work." Her directness confirming that Olivia's careful performance hadn't fooled everyone, and solidifying my resolve that this revelation wasn't just for me but for Emma, who deserved a father who stood up for integrity rather than enabling systematic deception disguised as charitable work. The final technical preparations involved coordinating with the Fairfield Hope Gala's AV contractor, leveraging my relationship as a platinum sponsor to arrange a brief tribute video before Olivia's keynote address. The production team eager to accommodate Sterling and Associates without questions or complications that might jeopardize future contracts. Completely unaware that my tribute would systematically destroy their client's reputation, using her own documented words and surveillance footage that was impossible to deny or explain away. While I spent the final evening reviewing the compilation one last time with the detached analysis I'd use for any presentation that could make or break a deal. Watching Olivia's own voice condemn her more effectively than any accusation I could make, seeing the financial records showing systematic theft disguised as charitable expenses, and viewing that devastating video where she promised Andrew they could make their move after the gala and forced me to give her what she deserved. Not knowing that what she actually deserved was about to be delivered with precision timing in front of everyone whose opinion she'd spent years cultivating through careful image management, that was about to be exposed as elaborate performance designed to hide the most selfish, calculated betrayal imaginable. As I locked the final USB drive in my briefcase and prepared for the morning that would change everything, I realized that the trusting, generous husband who'd supported every foundation initiative and social ambition was completely dead, replaced by someone who understood that if Olivia wanted to reduce our marriage to a financial transaction, while she pursued excitement with Andrew using my money, then I would treat her like any other hostile actor in a deal I refused to lose, and tomorrow night, the woman who thought I was pathetic would discover that the predictable husband she'd underestimated had spent weeks orchestrating the kind of strategic destruction that would make her understand exactly what she'd thrown away. The perfect stage for Olivia's destruction presented itself at the Fairfield Hope Foundation's annual gala, held in the grand ballroom of the Greenwich Country Club, where 400 of Connecticut's most influential philanthropists had gathered to celebrate what they believed would be another triumph of charitable leadership, but would instead witness the most spectacular downfall in Greenwich society's recent memory. And as I adjusted my platinum cufflinks in the club's marble-appointed men's room, I realized that the wife who had so casually dismissed me as pathetic was about to discover that her predictable, boring husband had spent weeks orchestrating the most comprehensive public destruction in Connecticut's philanthropic community. A revelation that would obliterate her carefully constructed image in front of everyone whose opinion she'd spent her entire adult life cultivating through strategic positioning and meticulous reputation management, that was about to crumble when 400 witnesses learned exactly what their respected foundation leader had been doing with donor money and her husband's trust during those late-night strategy sessions with Andrew Blake. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The ballroom shimmered with controlled opulence as I entered precisely at 7 o'clock, wearing my custom-tailored charcoal gray suit. The crystal chandeliers casting warm light across polished marble floors, while fresh floral arrangements of white orchids adorned every table. A chamber orchestra playing Vivaldi selections as 400 guests in black tie formal, where circulated through the space discussing upcoming charity auctions and winter house plans. None of them aware they were about to witness the systematic destruction of the woman they'd all admired for her visionary foundation leadership and seemingly perfect marriage to the successful investment banker who'd made her social ascension possible through unwavering financial support that she'd repaid with systematic betrayal disguised as philanthropic innovation. I spent the first hour circulating strategically, greeting familiar faces from my banking world and Olivia's charitable circles, discussing market trends with potential clients, complimenting board members on the foundation's growth, projecting an image of calm professionalism while observing Olivia across the ballroom, stunning in her midnight blue Valentino gown, orchestrating final preparations with gracious efficiency. Completely unaware that her methodical husband had spent weeks preparing the most devastating presentation in Greenwich society history. One that would expose every lie she'd told and every dollar she'd stolen using her own documented words and surveillance footage that was impossible to deny or rationalize away. My moment came during the traditional sponsor recognition segment, when major donors would speak about the Foundation's mission, and I approached the podium positioned strategically near the ballroom's state-of-the-art AV system. Testing the microphone while Olivia beamed at me from the head table, probably proud that her reliable husband was finally engaging more actively with her foundation work. Completely unaware that the man she'd called pathetic was about to deliver the most methodical destruction in Connecticut philanthropic history, using the same analytical precision I applied to complex merger investigations, ensuring that every piece of evidence would be presented with irrefutable clarity that would make this moment legendary in Greenwich social circles for decades to come. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed friends and fellow philanthropists, I began, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom as conversations died and heads turned with practiced attention. Tonight we celebrate transparency, integrity, an authentic commitment to causes greater than ourselves, values that the Fairfield Hope Foundation has championed under my wife Olivia's innovative leadership, which has taught all of us so much about creative approaches to donor cultivation and the remarkable ways dedicated leaders can leverage personal relationships to achieve breakthrough results in charitable fundraising. Regardless of conventional boundaries that might limit less visionary approaches to philanthropic partnership and collaborative development that transcends traditional expectations about professional conduct. Olivia's champagne flute stopped halfway to her lips, her eyes meeting mine across the room with the first flicker of genuine concern as she recognized something different in my tone. But she was trapped by social convention and the expectations of 400 guests, unable to stop what was about to unfold without creating an even bigger scene. Her smile becoming strained as I clicked the remote, and the ballroom's massive display screens flickered to life with a title slide reading: Authentic Partnership, a forensic analysis of innovation in philanthropic leadership and personal investment. The presentation began with a comprehensive financial timeline showing 8 months of foundation development activities that had consumed $67,000 in joint account expenditures. Each expense meticulously categorized with timestamps and cross-references, revealing hotel receipts from the Carlisle and the Plaza, restaurant bills from Michelin-starred establishments, weekend retreats to Napa Valley vineyards. All documented with the same forensic precision I used for corporate fraud investigations. Except this time the embezzler was my wife, and the stolen funds had been used to finance her affair with Andrew Blake, while she convinced everyone that I was supporting innovative charitable strategies, rather than unknowingly funding the systematic betrayal of our 15-year marriage, conducted with breathtaking arrogance and calculated cruelty, that reduced me to nothing more than a convenient funding source for her romantic getaways disguised as professional development activities. The surveillance photographs came next, captured by Amanda's team with telephoto precision. Olivia and Andrew at intimate corner tables in Manhattan restaurants, passionate embraces in hotel lobbies, weekend trips that matched precisely with her claimed foundation conferences, each image timestamped and geotagged, building an undeniable narrative of systematic deception that had nothing to do with donor cultivation, and everything to do with the most expensive affair in Greenwich society's recent memory. Funded entirely with money I'd earned through 20 years of building Sterling and Associates, while my wife systematically documented my assets and planned my financial destruction with the man who was helping her calculate the most profitable exit strategy from our marriage. Then came the audio evidence that would destroy her completely, Olivia's own voice filling the ballroom through the high-quality sound system, recorded during one of her late-night strategy calls with Andrew. David is so pathetic now, he just keeps writing checks and thinking I'm working late for charity, but after the gala when I'm established as Connecticut's premier philanthropic leader. Andrew and I can make our move and he'll have no choice but to give me what I deserve. Her words echoing through the elegant space, while 400 guests processed the complete destruction of everything they'd believed about her character. Her marriage, and her commitment to charitable work that had supposedly consumed her with authentic passion, rather than serving as elaborate cover for systematic theft and adultery, conducted with such calculated precision that she'd actually used foundation events to maintain her deception, while mocking the husband whose generosity had made her social success possible. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, 400 people frozen in horrified fascination as I systematically destroyed Olivia's reputation with her own documented evidence, watching her parents' faces crumble in disbelief. Her foundation board members exchanged shocked glances, her closest friends stare with expressions of complete betrayal, while Emma, our 16-year-old daughter, looked directly at me with an expression that was somehow both heartbroken and proud before speaking in a voice that carried across the silent ballroom with devastating clarity. So all those foundation planning sessions were just you stealing Dad's money to cheat on him while making him feel like he wasn't good enough. You used my college fund to pay for hotel rooms with Andrew while telling everyone that Dad was too boring to understand your needs. Olivia tried to speak, a strangled sound escaping her lips, but no words came, just broken gasps that conveyed the magnitude of her shock and humiliation, while I pulled out my phone and announced to the stunned gathering the final phase of her destruction. Since Olivia has made it clear that I'm just a pathetic paycheck to her, I've taken the liberty of canceling that paycheck permanently. As of this moment, all joint accounts have been frozen by emergency court order. All credit cards have been canceled, and Olivia's access to any marital assets has been permanently revoked pending divorce proceedings that begin Monday morning, with full documentation of systematic marital fraud and asset theft. The devastating finality of those words echoing through the ballroom as Olivia collapsed into her chair, her midnight blue gown now seeming to weigh her down like chains. Her transformation from confident socialite to financial pariah, complete in less than 20 minutes of systematic evidence presentation that had exposed every lie she'd told and every dollar she'd stolen. While I walked toward the ballroom exit with measured steps, leaving behind a woman whose casual cruelty had just cost her everything she'd worked years to build. Knowing that by morning, every detail of her systematic betrayal would be circulating through Connecticut's interconnected social networks. Ensuring that her dismissive declaration that I was pathetic would be remembered as the moment she revealed her own character so completely that no amount of charitable rhetoric could ever restore the reputation and respect she just lost forever in front of everyone whose opinion she'd spent her entire career trying to earn through careful image management that had just been exposed as elaborate fraud designed to cover the most selfish, calculated betrayal in Greenwich society's recent memory. The silence that followed my departure from the Greenwich Country Club wasn't empty. It was pregnant with the systematic consequences I'd spent months preparing. And as I drove through Connecticut's winding roads toward the hotel suite I'd reserved days earlier, I felt the profound transformation from the naive husband who'd believed Olivia's dismissive declaration that I was pathetic to the architect of her complete social and financial destruction, knowing that by morning, the emergency court orders would be fully executed, the divorce papers filed with comprehensive fraud documentation, and her carefully constructed life would begin its methodical collapse under the weight of her own documented betrayal, and the Foundation Board's inevitable decision to terminate the woman who'd used charitable work as cover for systematic theft and adultery conducted with such breathtaking arrogance that she'd actually mocked her husband's generosity while using his money to finance romantic getaways with the philanthropic advisor who'd helped her plan the most expensive betrayal in Greenwich society's recent memory. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I didn't go home that night because home was still contaminated with 15 years of what I now understood had been systematic manipulation disguised as marriage, still heavy with the ghost of trust I'd never be able to resurrect, so instead I checked into the St. Regis in Manhattan, a neutral space where I could process what I'd just accomplished without the emotional weight of our shared bedroom, our family photos. The kitchen counter where she'd looked me in the eye and told me I was pathetic while secretly planning to take half my business assets through divorce proceedings. She'd been orchestrating with Andrew's assistance and legal guidance from attorneys who'd gravely underestimated the boring, predictable husband's ability to implement comprehensive asset protection strategies with forensic precision and execute financial justice with devastating effectiveness that would leave her with nothing but the consequences of treating the man who'd built everything like a convenient ATM she could manipulate while pursuing excitement with someone who'd helped her calculate the most profitable way to destroy our family. Matthew Lane's text arrived at 12:15. All emergency orders executed flawlessly, joint accounts frozen except basic living expenses, credit cards canceled, business assets fully protected under new corporate structure. Temporary primary custody of Emma granted to you with immediate effect. Olivia cannot access any marital funds or relocate Emma without court approval. Comprehensive fraud documentation filed with criminal referral recommended by the judge, who is visibly disgusted by the scope of her systematic theft conducted under the guise of charitable work. And I felt the deep satisfaction of a complex hostile takeover completed exactly according to specifications, every financial vulnerability addressed, every legal contingency planned for. Every structural weakness in Olivia's position exploited with the precision I'd learned from decades of protecting client assets from predatory schemes that seemed sophisticated, until the right forensic accountant applied methodical analysis and refused to accept surface explanations that were actually elaborate deceptions designed to hide systematic theft from trusting partners who'd spent years building what their spouses planned to steal through calculated betrayal disguised as personal fulfillment. And professional development. The next morning brought Olivia's predictable desperation: 47 missed calls, 32 voicemails that progressed from shocked anger to sobbing pleas to threats of legal retaliation. Each message revealing her complete failure to understand that this wasn't an emotional reaction, but a calculated response to months of systematic financial fraud. That the pathetic husband she dismissed had been replaced by someone who documented everything, planned every move, and executed justice with the cold efficiency of a controlled demolition that left nothing standing except what deserved to survive. Which in this case was my relationship with Emma and the business I'd built through 20 years of dedication. While Olivia was spending our shared resources on romantic getaways, disguised as foundation planning sessions with a man who'd helped her plan my financial and emotional destruction with such calculated precision that she'd actually used our daughter's college fund to pay for hotel suites, where she celebrated her freedom from the boring, reliable husband whose generosity had made her social ascension possible in the first place. When I finally returned home that Monday afternoon, I found her in our kitchen, still wearing yesterday's wrinkled gown, surrounded by empty wine bottles and tear-stained tissues. Her phone buzzing constantly with calls from Foundation board members and social contacts who'd witnessed her public destruction. And when she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes and asked, "How could you humiliate me like that in front of 400 people at my own gala?" I simply placed the comprehensive financial audit on the granite counter and said, "You humiliated yourself by stealing $67,000 of our money to fund your affair while telling me I was pathetic. And I made sure everyone could see exactly what you'd been hiding, while you convinced them I was a boring, inadequate husband who should feel grateful that you tolerated my financial support for your supposed charitable work that was actually systematic theft disguised as philanthropic innovation, conducted with such calculated cruelty that you involved our daughter in your exit strategy while mocking the man whose success had made your entire social world possible." The legal proceedings unfolded over the next 8 months with ruthless efficiency because Amanda's evidence was unassailable and Matthew's strategy was flawless, resulting in a settlement that awarded me primary custody of Emma. Our Greenwich estate, Sterling and Associates, completely intact and restructured to prevent future predatory claims, and 72% of our marital assets after accounting for the documented fraud and systematic waste. While Olivia received just enough to start over in a modest apartment, but nowhere near the comfortable divorce she'd calculated with Andrew's assistance. Her attorney advising immediate acceptance rather than prolonged litigation that would only increase her public humiliation, and the risk of criminal prosecution for systematic financial fraud that had been documented with such precision that no jury would interpret it as anything other than premeditated theft disguised as legitimate charitable expenses that had actually funded the most expensive affair in Connecticut's philanthropic community. Olivia's foundation career ended within 72 hours as the Fairfield Hope Board voted unanimously for her immediate termination, citing conduct fundamentally incompatible with our mission and values. While Andrew faced equally devastating consequences as his consulting business collapsed when other charitable organizations learned about his role in systematically defrauding a major donor, leaving both of them unemployable in Connecticut's interconnected philanthropic community, where reputation and trust were the currencies that determined access to the kind of positions they'd both sacrificed everything to obtain, proving that excitement and passion were poor substitutes for integrity and genuine commitment to the causes they claimed to serve, while actually serving only their own selfish desires for romantic fulfillment, funded by systematic theft from the man who'd supported their supposed charitable work with unwavering generosity and trust. Emma's reaction, when I sat her down to explain everything after the legal proceedings concluded, demonstrated the maturity that comes from watching a parent's systematic deception with teenage clarity. "Dad, I'm proud of you for standing up to her instead of letting her steal everything you worked for, while pretending I was too young to understand what was really happening. Because I knew she was lying about those foundation meetings and strategy sessions, and when she started asking me about which parent I'd want to live with, it felt like she was trying to use me as a weapon against you. Which made me realize that someone who would steal from their own family and lie to their own child isn't someone I want making decisions about my future. Especially when you've been the parent who actually showed up consistently, while she was busy planning our family's destruction with someone who helped her calculate the most profitable way to betray everything we'd built together through your hard work and sacrifice that she dismissed as pathetic predictability. 2 years later, Sterling and Associates had expanded into a larger Manhattan office with additional partners specializing in family wealth protection. My reputation for comprehensive fraud investigation and asset preservation, attracting high net worth clients who valued working with someone whose personal experience had taught him every method predatory spouses use to steal marital assets through systematic deception, disguised as personal growth and professional development. And I realized that Olivia's betrayal, devastating as it had been, had ultimately freed me from a relationship that had become financial exploitation disguised as marriage, allowing me to focus on building something genuine with people who actually valued integrity, loyalty, and the kind of steady reliability she dismissed as boring predictability, while she pursued excitement that lasted exactly as long as the stolen money held out, and the legal consequences remained hidden from the social circles whose approval she'd valued more than her family's trust and well-being. The most unexpected development came when I met Dr. Catherine Walsh, a forensic economist whose research on charitable fraud had caught my attention during a professional conference, leading to collaborations that evolved into friendship. Then romance built on intellectual compatibility and shared values rather than the desperate social climbing that had driven Olivia to destroy everything stable and meaningful in pursuit of excitement funded by systematic theft. And when Catherine met Emma, their mutual respect and easy conversation convinced me that some people enter your life not to exploit your success, but to help you appreciate what you've built through honest work and genuine commitment to the people who matter most. Creating the kind of authentic partnership that makes previous betrayals seem like necessary lessons, rather than permanent damage that defines your capacity for trust and genuine connection with someone who actually values what you've accomplished. 3 years after that devastating evening when she'd called me pathetic, Olivia contacted me through her attorney requesting a meeting, and I found her at a downtown Stamford coffee shop looking older, worn down by consequences. Her designer wardrobe replaced by discount clothes that suggested her new financial reality. Working part-time at a small nonprofit after her philanthropic career had been destroyed by the scandal that followed her everywhere she tried to rebuild her professional reputation. And she apologized with what seemed like genuine remorse, acknowledging that her pursuit of excitement had cost her everything that actually mattered. Her family, her reputation, her relationship with Emma, and most importantly, the partnership with a man who'd supported her ambitions for 15 years, while she systematically planned his destruction with the casual cruelty of someone who'd convinced herself that her boring husband was the obstacle to her authentic happiness, rather than the foundation that had made her comfortable lifestyle and social success possible in the first place. "I know you'll never forgive me, David," she said, hands trembling as she stirred her coffee, "but I need you to know that I understand now what I threw away, not just the marriage but the security, the respect. The life we'd built together while I chased something that felt exciting, but was actually just selfishness disguised as personal fulfillment. And Andrew turned out to be exactly as shallow and unreliable as you probably knew he was from the beginning, using me just like I used you, except I was too blinded by my own arrogance to see that the pathetic, predictable husband I dismissed was actually the most valuable thing in my life, and I destroyed it for something that wasn't even real. Just fantasy funded by your money and enabled by your trust that I systematically violated, while convincing myself that I deserved better than the man who'd given me everything I actually needed to be happy." 5 years after she dismissed me as pathetic, I stood in my expanded Greenwich home watching Emma graduate summa cum laude from Yale, her education funded by the college accounts I'd protected from her mother's systematic theft. While Catherine worked beside me on a research project documenting financial abuse patterns that would help protect other families from the kind of systematic deception we'd survived. And I realized that Olivia's betrayal had taught me that authentic success comes from building something